done it, I hope.
Let me try. Okay, this, yeah.
Ah, yay.
All right. Okay. Let me get rid of this here.
It's a jungle.
It's a jungle out there. That's right. So let's see how this works.
Is that an invasive?
Not necessarily. Actually, it kind of is.
Or is that a plant in your living room?
Don't worry about it. Just go with the flow.
Okay.
Because of what we call plant blindness, some people never recognize invasives until it's way too late. Here's Arizona near Tucson just a few weeks ago.
And still burning.
You may have noticed, right, the haze in the air over Albuquerque was really bad for a while. That's the view from Tucson. So I inserted these because Marcia Kellogg, who's coordinating the Sandia Collaborative, asked the question, why should we care about these? You know, if we're not farmers, you know, why should we learn about these? Why should we care about them? Because they can intrude on pretty much everything we know, especially if we love the land. Here we have an invasive species called buffalo grass, which is pretty much taken over the Sonoran Desert, which had never been accustomed to range fires in the past. And you'll hear a little bit more about that later on. But buffalo grass, which comes from Africa, can add a tremendous amount of dry fuel, along with partners kind of like Sahara mustard is also a big culprit. Bermuda grass and some other mustards are also implicated, but this buffalo grass is a real villain. So I'm going to skip through what you just saw. Here's why it's important. So even though you know, Arizona has these iconic species, the saguaro and a few others, we may not have such dramatic symbols of our desert or our forests, but we are tied to their fate. Now I want to show you, if I can, whoops. I'm gonna have to.
Oh yeah, sound effects.
Yep. I'm gonna watch a little video.
We live and work in the Sonoran Desert of southern Arizona. That's Drew. And Nick. And that's me. I'm Kara. Right now, our desert faces a serious threat from an invasive plant, and that plant is buffalo grass.
Buffalo grass is a non-native invasive grass introduced from Africa. It was brought over in the 1930s for erosion control and for cattle forage. It is now well established throughout the Sonoran Desert. Buffalo grass spreads exponentially, and this patch right here could double in size in just 2 to 3 years. Buffalo grass is a perennial bunch grass. Perennial means that it's alive for more than 1 year, and bunch grass refers to the fact that all of the stems originate from a common base. During the dry season, buffalo grass is straw-colored and has a very messy appearance. However, when it rains, buffalo grass starts to green up and forms a reddish-purple seed head shaped like a bottle brush. It also has white hairs where the leaf blade diverges from the stem. You can think of this as a hairy armpit. After the seeds have dispersed, the central stem, or rachis, is very rough to the touch. This is a distinctive feature of bufflegrass and one of the best ways to identify it. If we compare bufflegrass with similar-looking native grasses, none of them have this single abrasive central stem, the rough rachis.
Bufflegrass is a threat for a couple different reasons. It outcompetes native plants. This permanently alters the composition of the ecosystem. It also increases fire risk. Deserts naturally have open spaces which prevent the spread of fire. Bufflegrass fills in these gaps, allowing for the linkage of fire. These fires damage and kill native plants, while bufflegrass is able to resprout.
Because bufflegrass is so aggressive, it can be hard to manage. But through the use of manual and chemical treatments, it can be done. There are essentially two ways to manage bufflegrass: pull it up or spray it with herbicide. When digging up bufflegrass, gather a clump of grass in one hand and pull while loosening the soil with the digging tool. The entire root must be removed. If any of the plant remains behind, it will resprout. The prying action with the digging bar is also effective, especially with a partner to help pull out the grass.
The use of an herbicide that contains the active ingredient glyphosate also provides an effective treatment. However, glyphosate only works on green plants and should only be applied when the plant is at least 50% green.
Because bufflegrass seeds remain viable in the soil for many years, it usually takes 3 to 5 years of consecutive treatment for patches to be totally eradicated.
If we don't do anything about bufflegrass, the Sonoran Desert will forever be changed. This could include the local extinction of saguaros.
The spread of bufflegrass will continue to affect our quality of life. This includes our ecotourism, our scenic beauty of the Sonoran Desert, real estate value, and even public safety.
At this point, bufflegrass can no longer be eradicated, but with your help, we can manage it in our parks, yards, roadways, and preserve our beautiful Sonoran Desert viewscape.
So I chose that video and bufflegrass and the saguaro phenomenon because it is so dramatic, but it's a poster child really for the picture that we see over and over again with these invasive species. So this presentation, I'm going to try to just talk a little bit about why we have these invasive species, some principles, why they are so successful, and a few problem species that we have now and might be on the lookout for in the near future. And to show you some online resources that can be used for identification and management practices. So first of all, we have a lot of wild plants. Some of them are weeds, but a lot of them are not. These are some of our spring wildflowers, all taken within the city limits of Albuquerque. And this attitude that one definition of a weed is if it can grow in this climate, no one planted it, it's got to be a weed. Well, that's the attitude that has resulted in the very problem we have. Because bringing in non-native species, destroying the cover of our so-called weeds that we have now, just spreads out the red carpet for these invasives. So all of these that you see here, these are the, I call them Albuquerque's most popular weeds. They're all, every one of them is from another country, actually another continent. And one dead giveaway is if there's a foreign country's name in the common name. So they don't evolve with, it's not that our native plants are adapted to our environment, it's that they evolved with our environment. So they have a real role there. But the invasives don't have any natural enemies here, few curbs on proliferation. They don't have an established place here. They don't give back. No relationship with the fungi in the soil. So they don't support, even if they're small, seemingly insignificant thing like a grass, they don't support the fungi that in turn support trees and other plants. So at best, they're just a dead weight, but they can be an absolute disaster. Unlike, here's a couple of our natives. They provide for for other creatures. Conwoods, they support so many types of insect larvae, which are the basis of the protein that baby birds need in order to grow. You've seen porcupines hanging out and eating the buds. Every year, they bring nutrients from the soil and deposit them on the surface, and they coexist well in the community that we have. In contrast, the trees that have been taking over the bosque, they support no American species of caterpillars. Tamarix, instead of bringing up nutrients, it brings up salt and leaves fire-prone litter. So wildlife is less diverse, and it produces lots of seeds. So invasion began in 1492, and the reason we have plants invading our country, our land, it's either accidental, people bringing over hay or other products or stowaways in aircraft, or intentional. And this is just the absolute stupidest thing in retrospect. They bring in restoration seed mixes. Oh, we need to, our grandfathers overgrazed and destroyed the landscape. Well, we got to bring in something that grows really fast. So they bring in things that are known to survive on very little water, grow quickly, and really get a foothold in our environment. Things like layman's love grass and that buffalo grass we just saw such a problem. The desired conditions for any environment is you have native plants and animals filling the niches. They serve each other and serve the land. And then with disturbance, and it can actually be a natural disturbance. Fires happen all the time, landslides, erosion, but it seems that human activities have a more devastating effect. But they emptied the niches of all the species that had been there, which just, as I say, rolls out the red carpet because the introduced species fill those niches very successfully, but don't have any of the curbs. And they proliferate, disrupt food, water, and fire cycles. So, here's typical kinds of disturbance that we're continually creating. And what comes back often, because we now have a history of these invasives, those seeds are blowing around everywhere and are often the first to get a foothold.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so here, I've just, this is just a picture of the, what we call these squirrel tails or fox tails, right? Everybody knows these. This is just a little minor example. These are not really much of a threat, except to your yard. But annual plants have these kind of gimmicks in order to assert themselves and become dominant. They deplete the soil moisture in the spring because they germinate so early in the year. And actually, these are germinating in the fall. They're just tiny little green things, but in the end, they create fuel and just many, many seeds, like our tumbleweeds or our mustards. They adapt pretty rapidly. This is that same foxtail. If you mow it a few times, before you know it, they start learning how to send their seed heads sideways, so the mower can't get them. The perennials, they like to do vegetative reproduction as well as seeds, so they have root sprouts, and, or even the detached plant parts floating downstream can take root. So this is just a synopsis. Oh, another thing is those perennials, they can use allelopathic effects, which are chemical signals or inhibitors that are produced in many ways. And these have a purpose in their natural environment to keep the right distance between plants. But here they are another way that they inhibit native plants who are not used to these particular chemicals. And then we have smothering. Here is, you know, sometimes it just becomes so rampant that they just block the sun and just take over. This is kudzu. Is everybody familiar with kudzu? It was brought into our southeast states as an ornamental because they realized that it would cover trellises really well and create shade structures. It'd be a nice thing for your patio. But there are entire towns covered with this stuff, and they constantly have to beat it back. So here's one resource from Mexico State and the Cooperative Extension Service. It's available online, and I will summarize these online things at the very end. But this is a really good rundown of how the state brought together a bunch of stakeholders, and they classified these weeds as to severity and practicality of dealing with them at this point. So here you see that invasive weeds are ones that actually threaten to harm the environment or the economy or human well-being. Uh-oh. Looks like
Tom, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I just got a note from Zoom that they extended our time beyond the 40 minutes.
That's guys.
So that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Sorry.
That's all right. Something is going on here, though. In that process, they froze my screen. It's interesting.
Do you want me to do another screen share? Let me check.
Yeah, why don't you turn off my screen share, and then we'll turn it back on again. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
It's better than everyone having to log in again.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here's that page again, but something I added. Because you hear invasive and noxious, they're used kind of willy-nilly, but the connotation is that it's a clear and present danger, unlike, say, a dandelion, a few other little things. So the state has classified these in a few ways. So class A is a real problem, but only locally it's kind of manageable if we get at it. Class B, it's really entrenched in certain areas, can be very severe locally, but it's not a widespread forget about it proposition, as is, say, salt cedar. You can deal with it locally, but one professor told me that there's probably no 1 square meter in New Mexico that does not have at least one salt cedar seed in it somewhere. Plus they have so that's class C, it's just so out of control. They're not even gonna try. We have to learn to deal with it. And then there's a watch list for species that are not yet here, but could turn into a problem. And these things include pampas grass and Spanish broom, which are now illegal to sell in California because they've become such a problem there. And we're still selling them here. So let's learn how to recognize tumbleweeds very early. They don't sprout as early as say that foxtail grass, but by June you can start recognizing them because they're so wiry looking, and they generally have these purple stripes running down the stem. That's 100% of them don't have it, but most of them do have some semblance of a purple stripe. And that tells you, you ought to pull this one before it gets too big. So you can pull them when they're up to a few inches high. It hasn't gotten prickly yet, and it hasn't started making seeds. They don't grow with rhizomes, so they're not going to send out root sprouts. But if they're really big and you pull them, they can disturb the soil and bring up more weed seeds. So there's a caution about that. Generally, they recommend cutting them when they're over a foot high. Goat head, bicyclist's favorite. These always stay very flat. Some people mistake goat heads or mistake other things for goat heads because they have spreading nature. But one thing about goat heads, they always stay entirely flat. You can sever them at the center. It's a single root. They will not come back if you get it at least a ½ inch under the surface. So you might mistake the common spurge, a common garden weed, which is fairly harmless, for it because it kind of spreads in the same way. But for one thing, it doesn't hurt. Another thing, it doesn't have any flowers that you can see. They're microscopic flowers. Ravenna grass was introduced by our zoo, and they refused to remove it. But now it is spreading with the wind up the bosque, at least as far as Santa Ana Pueblo. And that the people in Santa Ana are trying hard. They've got crews that are trying to beat this back. It's a kind of a fountain grass, and it's something you folks might get involved with at some point. Maybe you know Dara Seville, who leads the Yerba Mansa project around the Tingley Ponds in the bosque there. She's really effectively using volunteers to eliminate the Ravenna grass from there. Cheatgrass, this is my favorite headache. If you don't know what that is, that was the graceful looking thing that I showed in the very beginning. It looks so kind of pretty, but it took me about 4 years to get rid of it in my yard, and it was just a small appearance because the seed soil bank retains those for quite a few years. Yeah, it doesn't look alarming at all, but now it is literally everywhere in Albuquerque. You see it on the medians and on major roadways. And so if you want to keep this out of your yard, you got to really jump on it. You got to get before the seeds mature, and then it's not that difficult. The problem with it, it's another one of those fire-producing grasses. And if this gets established, say in a controlled burn, after a controlled burn in the national forest, you've got a real problem. So what about those thistles? My organization, Native Plant Society, has put out a really good guide to thistle identification because most of the thistles here are not a problem. They're native. They really help the butterflies and bees. Their seeds are food for birds, and they don't cause anybody a problem. Right, in Bernalillo County, all the drier areas, say the foothills, we don't have any invasive thistles up there, although I see people stopping the thistles, like along Pino Trail and Elena Gallegos, which is really a tragedy because they can be very pretty as well as useful to the ecosystem. So in the moisture areas, the bosque and East Mountain roadsides, we do have these. This is the bull thistle, which has really bizarre looking leaves, but they're dark green. And they have these, you can see, I can't use my pointer as it turns out, but the trait of most of the invasive thistles is if you look at the stems, they're spiny kind of wings or fins run up and down those stems. They don't just stop at the base of the leaves like native thistles for the most part. The bull thistle is nice green, bold green, both top and bottom of the leaves. Here's the musk thistle, and it's a little different. It has a really large flower, and the bracts, which are these little leaf-like things around the flower, they don't really end in spines. They're sharp, but they don't have spines sticking out of them. And the flowers tend to nod. They also have those fins or wings running down the stem, spiny wings. And also, you notice they're not very fuzzy looking. Our native thistles, and the New Mexico thistle is one of the more beautiful plants that we have in the foothills. It's gets tall and slender. It blooms very early. It's all done now, but the ones you find now are generally dried up. The seeds are ready to start another generation. And the flower bases have real spines coming out of them. They don't have those like leafy purplish bracts. The yellow spine thistle is at lower elevations. It's a little more raggedy looking, but it's also kind of pretty, and it doesn't really cause a problem for anyone. So something to have on your radar is the spotted knapweed. And if you recall that the book from New Mexico State University uses spotted knapweed as its cover photo. And now I've just in the last few days, I've noticed it when I was walking along one of the ditches in the North Valley, north of Candelaria. It produces a lot of these seed heads that look like little pineapples. Here's the flower. They call it spotted knapweed because the base of the flower, this urn-shaped base, has darker green spots, sometimes brown, but otherwise it's kind of pretty. But each of those flower bases turns into a packet of seeds, and it can spread like wildfire if you let it go in these moisture areas. Purple loosestrife, this is the last one I'm going to show you, is a waterside plant, streamside plant. It's been found along the Rio Grande, north of Espanola, a few times. And you see the map here. It's not supposed to be in New Mexico yet, but it pops up here and there. This is one to look out for. It's a pretty looking plant that you'll probably find beside the Rio Grande or ditch or some tributary. If you find this, we have to report this to whoever is supposed to be managing that area, because it has destroyed at least one wildlife refuge in upstate New York, totally rendered it useless for waterfowl and native plants. So what can we do? Don't be part of the problem. Don't be barging through the woods or through the desert. If there's a trail there, use it. And if you're clearing ground, plan to replant it, revegetate it as soon as possible, because maintaining the native ground cover is the most effective way of preventing invasion. Having to use chemicals later on, I hate the thought of it, but occasionally it's necessary. Glyphosate is like bad news now. We're not going to want to use that. But for some of these trees, for instance, like ailanthus, it might take that. And keep it clean, meaning don't bring in seeds where those things are not growing already. So if you go through an area that might have these invasives, check your clothing, your plants, cuffs, shoes, and dogs, horse legs. Check your tires, even bicycle tires. And if you work in these areas, clean the equipment in between the sites. So in general, it's best to know what you're looking for, weeds, learn the weeds present, known to be present in the area. And as I show you 2 potential new threats, the buffalo grass is another one. I didn't have time to add that in any detail. So if you spot an infestation, call on someone else to help you confirm that. Don't just start tearing things up. And then, report it to whoever's in charge. And sometimes that's hard to find out, but it is necessary. You could get arrested. So act with others, engage other people who have a vested interest, including people with homes in the area who don't want to see their values go way down or have a fire. And then go back after treatment, remembering that those seeds might still be in the soil. So here are the guides that I recommend, the New Mexico State Guide. Now it's fine, but the pictures are not that graphic or large enough for perfect identification. But it does give you a whole rundown of the kinds of threats and where these might occur. Our guide to the thistles, it's available online. We may be printing a few more soon. If we do, I'll make sure the broads get all they want. The Taos Land Trust Management Guide, that, I don't know if you know of the Taos Land Trust, but they're rehabilitating areas around Taos, especially agricultural areas. And they've put together a wonderful, it's like an online pamphlet to many of the same problem plants that we have. Not the true desert ones, but some of the other ones, including thistles and the knapweed and all that. That's worth looking into because it has alternatives for eradication and management. And the National Park Service has a wonderful guide as well, because they have a definite interest in keeping nature intact where they manage their lands. So that's it. I'm going to end this. I will make sure Susan has this this here summary of the online resources, and she can have it available for everyone. If you're still with me. Huh. Boy, did they cut us off? Okay.
I don't think they did.
Okay. All right. I don't see any faces anymore though. Can you
I do.
unshare me? Yeah.
On the bottom of my screen, I have a little camera, and that puts me back to Zoom, I guess.
I don't have any of that stuff, but
it's not there unless you go way down and click on it. But now, I don't know what's going on.
I'm logging into the meeting here.
Okay.
Anyway, I spoke my piece. So if there are any questions, since I just can't see you, but if you want to ask questions, I'm available for that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Tom, is there any way to have somebody come out and look at what is in an individual's yard to see what is bad that should be removed and what is okay to leave?
Well, especially if you have suspicion about particular things. I don't think we have the people power to do a survey of everybody's yard, But if you have a concern about this or that, one thing you can do is, I can have my email address available. You can take pictures of some of these things and send them to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an acre and I'm trying to get part of it to just be natural I just mowed it for quite a while and now I'm trying to let just natural plants be there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if some of them are good and some are bad.
Right. One thing you can do is put in ones you know are good, especially shrubs and trees. What kind of water do you have available? You have just
No,
city water or what? Irrigation?
No, I don't want to water. I have an acre and half of it, I don't want to water it at all.
Uh-huh.
I want it
Right.
just to be natural, whatever
Yeah.
used to be there.
Right. To get things started, though, you may need a little extra TLC.
Well, I have things like purple aster
Uh-huh.
and that
Good.
little low-growing yellow flowery plant. I keep my tumbleweeds out. I keep my goat. Took me years to get the goat heads all out. I keep my foxtails out. There are some cute little, really low-growing daisy type things that I like that I've left. There's some funny grasses though that I'm not sure if they're okay or not.
All right. They're probably okay. If they don't look like that weeping, drooping cheatgrass.
They're not cheatgrass, no.
Okay. I wouldn't worry too much about them at this point. But if you want to send me pictures, that'd be great. Sounds like you've made a noble effort. So
I'm trying.
No sense.
At one point, I got that little desert plant called hidden flower with those little tiny weeny white flowers on it.
Yeah.
They started to get established and it took me 2 years to get it out once I realized what it was on my hands and knees.
Yeah, they're kind of nasty.
They are very nasty.
They're prickly. Yeah.
Yeah, they're prickly.
Yeah.
I think what happened here is that Zoom ended the meeting after an hour.
Yeah.
And, but we can still talk to each other. We just can't put anything up on the screen. So I don't know if it bothers people enough to want to log in again. The one thing I wanted to ask you, Tom, if you're going to do this presentation for the Sandia Collaborative, I think we should have that slide that I put together on what the Forest Service policy is on invasive plants. Do you still have that, or did you never get that for me?
I've got that.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, at least for the collaborative, we should have that.
Right. So it relates to the Forest Service. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway.
I've got you back now.
Our pictures are back.
Why don't we talk about whether we want to do a field trip on Thursday morning?
No,
Tom, do you feel like there's going to be enough things to see, like native thistles and I don't know if we need permission to get rid of tumbleweeds or pull them up.
Actually, I think officially we do.
Okay.
The problem is also it gets hot so fast now. This week is supposed to be kind of a brutal week.
It is. It is.
Around 100 every day. So it may not be the best week for it. As I said, the New Mexico thistle is already, it's done its thing. It's a biennial, only lasts 2 years. And so the ones that bloomed now are just dried things. The other one, the yellow spine, you can see what that's like. And I'll try to convince you that it's not one of the invasives. Now, there's also the bosque, the valley, that place along the ditch that I saw, the spotted knapweed. There are alternatives, I guess. But I don't think this week is going to be the best choice because of that.
Is there anybody else who has an issue with maybe putting it off until the monsoons have started and things cool down a little bit at night?
And maybe the virus isn't still surging?
So Jerry, you are willing to put it off?
Oh yeah.
Sarah?
I'm gonna get out. It needs to be at 7 in the morning.
How about you, Linda? You good?
Yeah, I'm willing to put it off, but not until fall. I mean, it was earlier suggested we put this off until fall, and I think we've got to look at the plants when they're flowering, and now,
Right.
and
Right.
so we can't wait too late
Yeah.
because
What I can
they
do,
won't
I
be flowering in late August.
yeah. Right. But there'll be other ones flower.
Okay.
There's no end to invasive species. So, but with the monsoons, things, if we get some monsoons, hopefully, they'll be more lifelike. Everything will be a little perkier and more characteristic of what we should look for. So that's a good thing.
So Tom, what do you think about, I think the foothills are a good place to do a shorter field trip. That's a starter.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted to do one also up at Tree Springs, that trail.
Right. Uh-huh.
How do you feel about that? Is there a reason that wouldn't be a good place to do it?
No, it's okay. I don't know it as well, but it's a fine place. Now I know you're not exactly a mountain climber anymore.
Never was actually, but.
So we would probably stop when we get to the really steep zigzags, the steep ascent.
Yeah.
Are there meadows at Tree Springs? I can't remember. I remember at the bottom of the hill there's meadows, but once you get going up, it goes up steep.
Right. So we would stop there. We wouldn't get up to that next life zone or anything, but we do go through some interesting arroyo vegetation. It's a nice trail.
Yeah, I guess we could schedule it. The problem with scheduling it during the monsoons is that they move in really fast and you can get caught if you're a little higher up in as far as lightning goes, because that's happened to me before.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to get higher up. Also, usually the thunderstorms hit in the late afternoon. And so if we stick with the plan of getting out there early,
right,
that should be not a problem.
Yeah. How about the Bosque? How do you feel about the Bosque? Because we have the Shining River Trail that we've adopted. Yeah. And
I'd love to go on that because I've never figured out how to park, how to get on that trail. So,
okay.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's just immediately south. The parking lot is just immediately south of the Paseo del Norte Bridge on the west side of Rio Grande. Yeah. It's very easy to get to. If you want to go out there and walk around sometime, I would come out. And Linda's been out there a bunch with Bob too.
Yeah, I'd like to have a preview. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's Ravina grass. When I was there 2 weeks ago, I came across what I thought was Ravina grass, but it didn't have the feathery outcrop that I used to identify Ravina grass with. So, I was reluctant to pull it since I didn't know for sure.
Definitely has a lot of tumbleweeds.
Yeah,
tumbleweeds, but
the reason I suggested tumbleweeds in the Atlanta Gallegos area is because it's only just started in one spot. It's a disturbed area, but it's just, it's about halfway to the national forest boundary, maybe a little further.
Okay.
Easy to read.
We would need a permit to pull them?
At least a verbal okay from the director of Albuquerque Open Space. Yeah, and I know her quite well, so it shouldn't be hard. But going through that is good faith. It's keeps a good relationship. Instead of some open space volunteer coming upon us and starting to take pictures of us and reporting us, because he doesn't know what the weeds look like. But anyway. That was my reason for that. The other place in the Bosque is near the Bosque School. That trail that goes between a ditch and the river, and goes to the Oxbow. So near one end of that trail is where I saw bull thistle. So that'd be instructive also.
Well, maybe we
could
could
do
set
one
up,
both. We could do one in the Bosque and one in the Elena Gallegos area or
Yeah.
Tree Springs.
Right,
We do a forest and a bosque.
right.
yeah, that's
And-
what I was gonna say, is maybe we could set up some options.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we would have, we would be able to schedule dates yet. Because I think we have to, number one, wait to see whether or not things are gonna be open, because everything's getting worse with COVID-19 and group size. Right now, I think it's only 5. I think it's only supposed to be 5. At least in the forest, national forest. But
I don't know if that pertains, it's not clear to me if that pertains to being outdoors or being indoors. Is the 5 for indoors, and maybe there's because a friend of ours is using 6 for a picnic, for an outdoor picnic, like the one we had the Broads meeting at.
Yeah. I think if you're in the same household, kind of anything goes. And if you keep 6 feet apart and you're outdoors, you don't have to wear masks, because outdoor transmission is not very common.
right.
You should keep your 6-foot distance. If you get closer, you should wear masks. So that's it.
Well,
We
I could send Crystal an email asking her what the guidelines are for the Tree Springs.
Oh.
I can do
Like
that.
Yeah, like for pulling weeds if we see them.
Tom, you should turn your camera back on.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
All right, I was just seeing if you were going to miss me.
I missed.
But we can only see half of you.
That's true too.
Is that better?
Sort of like me, unless I put my hand up.
Better.
Yeah.
So I'll send something out, and if we do a couple of just cruises, maybe one in the Bosque and one up at Elena Gallegos, I think it's just going to have to be kind of informal.
Yeah.
This is
And
when
not everybody's
Susan,
gonna
Linda,
get
and
naked.
Tom are going. If you want to be there, show up.
Yeah. That's good.
Does that seem reasonable, Tom?
Yeah.
How about you,
Yeah.
Linda? You're good with that?
I'm good with that too.
Okay, and I need to ask open space, or maybe Tom, you're going to do that?
Let me ask open space. Yeah,
Okay.
because I know her.
Yeah, my contact at Open Space is Attila Balati's son, Kyle. He works with us on the Shining River Trail. And pretty much they don't want groups doing things.
Right.
Because, you know, we usually would be doing stuff down there, but we're not. And I think it's for their safety too.
Liability. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm supposed to ask about a meeting place in open space anyway, so.
Okay.
So I'll let you handle that, okay?
All right.
Great,
I'll talk
thanks.
over with her.
Anybody else have any comments, questions, desires?
I missed the first 15 minutes. Did I miss anything big, or was it just intros?
You missed
I
the
am
video.
recording this, but I don't think that the question and answer part is going to be there. I don't think this part right now is going to be recorded.
It says it's recording on my screen.
Oh, it does? Okay, because Zoom, I thought Zoom maybe kicked us out, but
I
No,
don't know.
it's recording. Okay.
okay.
So
Well,
what's in the first 15 minutes?
Yes.
yeah, my sister Amy's going to have to watch it as a recording, and I'll see if I can figure out how to do that. and send it out to everybody. But thanks, Tom.
Yeah, it's a huge file. It's the only thing. So,
Yeah.
Long download.
Maybe I need to send a link to it.
You could do that. If you have Dropbox, you can put it in Dropbox and let everybody share that.
Then they have to have Dropbox.
Yeah, I used to have Dropbox, but I don't know if I do anymore.
Yeah. Or if you could put it up on YouTube. You ever put anything up on YouTube?
Yeah.
I have not.
Well, if Linda knows how,
Or,
that'd be great.
or Facebook. You can share it on Facebook.
Huh.
I think what I'll do is I'll talk to Sally about the best way to share it, because she might have some suggestions. Sally is the Southwest coordinator for the national office, and she said she'd be on this call, but she didn't show up. So I'll contact her. Okay. And then call Sally.
Has anyone else on this call seen problems identifying the thistles, or have they had other problems identifying plants that they want to know about?
Huh. Good question.
I don't have a problem, except that we identified the wrong kind of it wasn't cheatgrass, it was a native plant on the top of the sandias.
Oh, well, that
was several years ago.
2 bags.
I'm not taking responsibility for that.
Yeah, she told us that was cheatgrass.
Well, there was lots of it left. So I figure whatever it was, it probably came back. All right, well, we will not see you Tuesday morning then. Okay?
Thursday morning?
Darn hot.
Okay.
Because I don't think open space opens much earlier than.
Mary is falling asleep.
Yeah. I've been falling asleep the whole time. What are you talking about? I just woke up from my nap.
I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody. If I can figure out how to get out of this. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for showing up.
Nice to see you, Sarah.
Bye-bye. Yeah.